Coming up on today's episode of Real Talk Rentals, we're going to talk about the whole property management package. Welcome back to Real Talk Rentals, a podcast brought to you by OnQ Property Management. We're here to give you all the behind the scenes of what goes into managing a rental property. I'm your host, Ben. With me, as always, my co-host, Mr. Eric Dixon, the go-to expert on all things property management. And this time, in this episode, we're going to be digging into kind of the whole property management package. We're going to be talking about all of the features and services that are available through most property management companies outside of what you generally think of. So let's just start then right there. Eric, I'm going to ask you, let's define the basics. If you're paying a monthly management fee, what should be included in that? None of the upgrades, bells, whistles, just a tenant placed in and you're managing it. What should be included in that?
Okay, so yeah, that's kind of your basic package, right, of property management. So I would start with, and maybe put the hat of a landlord, what their expectation is and
right.
What the reality is with it is you're going to collect the rent. So there's the collection of rent aspect, right? It's due on the 1st, it's late on the 3rd, it's, the 5-day notice, the eviction process, if it gets to that, all of that, that's included. You've got your facilitating of maintenance, repairs, tenant calls in, says there's a leak or there's a, appliance goes out, facilitating all of that. I'd say the maintaining of any relationship, whether it be, so there's obviously the landlord and the tenant, an HOA, vendor, you're kind of maintaining those relationships, sure. Contractors. Whenever I would talk to new clients coming on board, I would always let them know the property manager's job is I'm the property manager. You got tenant on one side speaking in one ear. You've got the owner speaking in one ear. And it's my job to digest both of these sides and come up with a solution, right? And
sure.
Have empathy for both and figure out, what is the best path forward that abides by the lease, gets everything done at a cost-effective, in a cost-effective way. So it's maintaining that relationship. I would say all of the accounting. So that kind of goes with rent, but it's detailing out all of your income and all of your expenses monthly, whether it's sending by direct deposit or a check, a monthly statement, a year-end statement,
right.
All of the accounting.
Super important.
Yep. And I'd say for even a lot of very successful investors, accounting may be the number one. They're like, look,
absolutely.
My tenants pay rent on time, dude. Like I can handle the maintenance, but I have to find a perfect way to document all my income and expense and my 1099 and my, all of that stuff at the end of the year. I would say included in management should be your 24-hour service. I guess we call it, we're on call 24/7.
Sure.
But whether if a tenant calls or a tenant sends in a work order, whatever, that you're responsive 7 days a week, weekends and nights and holidays should at least have an emergency service of some kind. I was going to say something with HOAs, but I guess it's just maintaining that relationship.
Sure.
If there's 2 nights ago, I got an HOA notice for one of my renters and I texted a picture of it to my property manager here at the office and said, hey, can you handle this?
Yeah.
It is a weed violation,
sure.
A landscape weeds violation, right? And then I would say from there, just providing any sort of market analysis or market update on the market, I would expect my property manager to let me know, whether it be at lease renewal, maybe I call up once a year. I'm like, hey, how's the market doing? The property manager should have an insight. That's what you're paying for, some sort of insight. So I don't know. Is there anything else? I mean, just with the basics of management.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things you brought up that, we do, and I'm sure a lot of other companies do, the facilitating the maintenance, but there are companies that charge a markup on that. So you need to be aware that some companies might say, we'll handle that, but it's going to be 10% more.
Yeah. And it actually, that's a great point. And it's not even that's a bad thing, right? It's just the way we're structured is included in just if you hire us just for the management fee, and we're not talking about placing the tenant, leasing the house out. We're just saying the tenant lives there. What we handle for the management fee includes maintenance. Whereas another company may be like, hey, that's not encapsulated in my management fee.
Yeah.
We tack on a percentage or a markup or whatever the relationship is with vendors. There's two, one local company I know of and another one in another state. They just don't do maintenance. And they said, oh no,
really?
People hire us just to do the accounting and the placement of tenant, and then the owner does their own maintenance.
That's wild.
And I'm kind of like, why do you have a property manager?
Yeah, I would think. I mean, gosh,
if half the headache, right?
If I was going to hire a property manager, I would want them to get yelled at by the tenant instead of me, like you said, be that mediary, and then handle the maintenance. Those are the two things. Everything else, it's like I can work a QuickBooks. Like I'll figure out the accounting.
And it's funny, everybody, you say that, and then some people are the complete opposite.
Sure.
Like, dude, I'm super handy. I can text or find any sort of vendor, but I don't know accounting. I don't know landlord law. I don't know, so it's just interesting, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, long and short of it is find a company like OnQ that does it all.
We do it all
within that price point.
Small plug there.
Yeah. Okay. So outside of that, and this is really kind of the meat of what we wanted to talk about today, is what are the additional services a landlord should consider? I know when our portfolio managers, our sales guys are talking to people, they're going to give them this plate of options. These are the things available. What are some of those, and what are the ones that you think that owners should consider?
Yeah. So let me just start from the top. I'm putting myself in my brain 3-4 years ago when I was doing the these appointments with owners, and they would ask, hey, what are the above and beyond, or what are the add-ons, or what are the additional services you offer, right?
Sure.
Because those different services are going to differentiate depending on what company you go to. So one of the most popular is eviction protection. Protects the landlords against the expense of an eviction in the future. So,
right.
We charge a fee, whether it be monthly or annually, or however we dice it on the contract there. But it's not insurance, but it's kind of like an insurance policy. Sure. That's like, hey, you pay a small fee every year. If there is an eviction, then we will bear the expense of that.
Yeah.
And we have the relationships with the attorneys and our legal staff to, handle that. So eviction protection is like 60-70% of owners, get it. It's very inexpensive.
Yeah. I don't know why you wouldn't get it.
And it just gets the peace of mind and the legal backing to handle any eviction.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you hope you don't need, but you're going to really kick yourself.
Yeah.
If you do need it.
Yeah. And it's tax deductible anyway, right? It's an expense, but people ask in the same breath, like, your eviction rate must be high. If you're selling eviction protection, it's like, no, it's actually very, very low. And that's why the cost is very, very low.
So, and we're also selling it because we're confident in our tenants. We're
absolutely.
We're so confident that we don't think you'll need this. That's a couple bucks,
Exactly. So there's that one. I would say the next most popular is our HVAC. There's kind of into a different bins, right? There's the HVAC filter program. So we will actually go into your home every other month or biannually or whatever schedule we're on there with you, and we will go replace the filter. So It actually is different than most filter services. They just mail them to your doorstep, which is great. That at least gets step one, is there's a new filter on the premises.
There's a reminder.
Yep. And then it's up to the tenant, but you're depending on the tenant to put it in, right? So our service is more hands-on. We'll go when we're doing a routine inspection or when we're just doing a filter change, and our inspector will bring you the ladder. They'll vacuum it out. They'll replace the filter. They take before and after pictures, and they make sure that those filters are swapped. And so this one, you have to remember that the reason to do it is to prevent stress on your AC system. Yeah. And so maybe it will make the lifetime maybe 1 or 5 or 10 years longer if you're swapping the filters every other month like you should be. And so there's that. And then the annual tune-ups with the AC is the other bucket.
Yeah.
And, usually we send that out like in March or April to say, hey, tune up your AC before the summer. Because here in Arizona, that thing's running like 15 hours a day or whatever it is.
Yeah, at least.
A dozen hours a day, 20 hours a day to keep up with the crazy heat. So.
Yeah. And in other states, it's probably the reverse, where in the winter, it's cranking for them.
I was thinking about that because we don't really manage in areas that are super cold, but they probably have the reverse program before winter. That's like, hey, get your heaters tuned up, get those, everything ready to avoid the big repair in the summer or in the winter, So I would say those are it. A couple things, I just pulled stats off because I thought it was super interesting. We were talking about it yesterday with filters. On a nationwide poll, they said that if you replace their filters, so if the owner's providing filters to the tenant and they make sure that they're replaced, so this is assuming that they are replaced at least every quarter, that the HVAC work orders are 30% less.
That's insane.
So it's like, hey, if you only have an AC work order every 3 years, it's like you're going to have one every 9 years or whatever that would be.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at math. 30% less. But if you had 3 a year, you're going to have 2 a year or whatever it is. So I just had an HVAC work order yesterday. So it ended up being a fuse, which was a lot less than something else could have been. And then the next stat that I thought was interesting is you provide the filters, you make sure they're swapped, and the tenant's energy consumption is 10% less because the stress on the unit, it's more efficient. So
we were talking about this yesterday, but I think I see it all the time in the way people are interacting with us online and leaving reviews and stuff, that the tenants, the residents in the properties, really, they appreciate it. And
they love it. Yep.
And as a renter, and I know you were saying as a homeowner, it's so easy to forget about that, especially when you're in like a place like Arizona where we're not using it for several months, and it's just like out of sight, out of mind. And I'm not intentionally not changing that. I forgot, and having someone come and do that regularly makes a huge difference.
We literally talked about this yesterday, and I told you I had to replace mine. I'm like, they're in my garage. I'm going to do it tonight. Didn't do it last week. So, I mean, and I own the home, and it's my money lost if I don't do it, right? So, and I still don't do it. So I can tell you that there are tenants and residents with great intentions to swap their filters every month, and they don't.
Yeah, and absolutely.
So that's a huge one. We rolled that out a couple years ago, and it's selling like hotcakes. And it's not a huge profit center, but it's a awesome service center that provides top tier level service that no one else can offer. I mean,
and we had a ex-employee who will remain unnamed, but he bet me one time that 90% of tenants change their filters on their own. People do that on their own every month. And I didn't take him up on that bet, and I should have, because I said, buddy, there's no way. And I know we probably get owners who are like, they'll do it. They'll change their filter. And it's like, man, don't roll that dice.
No, and a lot of times it's not even financially. It's like, hey, the filter's inexpensive, but it's going to the store and getting it, and it's finding time to do it. You get home from work, it's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah, you already have them and haven't changed them, right? Dude, yours are sitting at your house.
100%. I'm doing it tonight. That's it.
All
right. And then I'd say the only other ones, so we offer routine inspections. So that would be in addition to the move-in and move-out inspections. This is above and beyond, twice a year. So if you're doing a move-in, move-out, and 2 routines, we're in the home 4 times in that 1-year lease.
Yeah.
And so, it isn't just to get in there and take pictures of the tenant's stuff. It's for 2 things. One is the tenant taking care of it. Are they abiding by the lease? We do a smell check, obviously, that you can't do from afar. You check if they have pets that you can't do from afar. But it's for preventive maintenance. I can't tell you how many times like they'll go in and take a picture under a sink and be like, dude, this is leaking. And the tenant had no idea.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I haven't opened that cupboard in months.
I didn't even know there was a cupboard down there. Yeah.
And so there's that side of it. And the tenants love it. They're super respectful. It's scheduled in advance by certified mail. They understand, the process there. Another couple, just maybe not as big, but roofing inspections and maintenance work. Similar to HVAC that gets done annually, the roof doesn't need to be inspected annually, but at least every 3 to 5 years, you should absolutely get those roofs inspected and maintained to avoid that catastrophic repair like I had to do last year.
I was going to say, Eric, famously,
yes,
we've mentioned a couple times.
Oh, dude, it still hurts. Oh, and get this. I replaced that roof 100%, lots and lots of money, and just a huge storm last week, it leaked. So. Yeah. And the roofers, they're warranting it, and it's not even a dig at them. Freak accident. Huge, it was like a microburst, like hit in that area, and it tore up. Anyway, it's just like it's the story that never ends. And then the last one is just additional services that we can facilitate and offer are things like pest control, pool service, landscape service, that we can help get the best vendors there to get eyes and ears on the property every week. So
sure, and that one rolls kind of into the next question, because what I hear a lot is owners saying, oh, landscape, I'll have the tenant take care of that, and again, roll of the dice, but what in your opinion are the typical ones that tenants are responsible for? And is that a good idea? Is it better to keep that in the property management space? Yeah.
And so just piggybacking off the previous, with landscaping, it just depends. And it's kind of hard. It can't be a yes or a no, because it just depends. If it's rock, desert landscape, very minimal to do, it's like, that's an easy one to put on the tenant.
Sure.
Even if they don't know how to maintain it, they could hire somebody for super cheap, or they could just spend a Saturday every few months and button it up, right? If it's high maintenance, if it's weekly lawn care, tall trees, a lot of shrubs, dropping leaves.
Yeah, an HOA that's going to fine you.
Dude, like my yard, my stinking trees in the back drop leaves every winter, and it is a hassle and a mess. If I rent my house out that I live in now, I have to include landscaping. It's just, you have to. The tenant will live there one winter, and they'll either be like, hey, this is horrible, I'm turning the water off, and they'll just kill everything. Yeah. Or they'll complain, right? So that one just depends. If it's easy, put it on the tenant. If it's harder to maintain, include it in rent and get a little more in rent, included. Pest control is typically always tenant, except for things like termites. If there's infestations of some kind, then the landlord steps in and takes care of the infestation if it's not tenant caused. So like termites are not tenant caused. If there's bee's nest goes into the attic, that's not tenant caused. No. If it's unless they're storing honey up there or something. And what was the other one that roof rats? We had roof rats in one of my rentals a couple years ago, and it's like, it wasn't the tenant's fault that the citrus fell and then all the rats came in the neighborhood and then they lived in the attic. Or a lot of times, I have a friend who owns a rental property in my neighborhood, and his next door neighbor to his rental house had the citrus trees. Yeah. And his rental got roof rats, and he's like, that nice warm attic. Yeah. And he's like, now I got to pay to get rid of all these rats because of the neighbor. It wasn't even him. Yeah. And so something like that as a landlord, you got to be cognizant of like pest control in general. Right. It's the routine ants and cockroaches and crickets and stuff that's on the tenant, but it's the infestations and the random stuff that the landlord still owns up to. Obviously, tenant responsible things are like utilities. Unless it's like a multifamily in an apartment, it's water, sewer, trash, gas, electric, all that's in the tenant's name. Yeah. Internet, cable, streaming services, obviously that's all in the tenant's name. When you're talking vacation rentals, which is a whole different ballgame, sure, those things you actually keep in your name as the landlord, and it's a higher expense, and then you can, you rent out the furnished rooms there. And then the other stuff that's kind of its own separate category that we'll probably have to cover another time is what these packages that you can come up with, whether it's insurance or credit reporting or they have rewards programs and different things that companies can offer, right? So we have our own resident benefits package here at our office, and it's just, we compiled the best benefits for our residents. Yeah. And these are services kind of like we were just listing out that would normally be for the landlord, but these are for the tenant. The tenant, yeah. And so we've just found over the years that residents are demanding higher level service and offerings, right? They're like, I don't want to have to go get tenant renter's insurance. I don't want to have to go get a third party to pay them to report my rental payments to the credit bureau. I don't want to have to, do all, they want it to be a one-stop shop. And as long as we can offer that high level of service at a good value, they love it. So we can talk about that as a we'll commit to, we'll do it next episode. We'll go over the resident benefits package, because there was some interesting stuff when we were talking yesterday that just about dollar amounts that people, by having their credit reported accurately. Yep. Get your credit reported when you pay rent can help you tenfold in the future. Yeah, absolutely insane. Okay, so that'll be next episode. So let's do one last question here then. Out of all these extras you listed, which one would you personally say is essential that, property owners don't nickel and dime on this one? It's something you need to consider. Yeah, so they've both happened to me personally, so I have a testimony of traumatic, things, right? It's traumatic, and it's got PTSD over. Yeah, but it's the annual preventative maintenance, right? So it's if you're in Arizona, especially, maybe you're in a place that has high AC usage or high heater usage, make sure you do annual inspections and tune-ups on those units. Yeah. So like here in Arizona, we send it out in March and April. We send it out multiple times to make sure that every owner knows, like, hey, spend the $100 or $200 now to save $500 or save $1,000 or save the cost of this replacement. And really what you're doing is you're kicking the cost of replacement down the road. Yeah. It's like at some point you're going to have to replace every single unit you have right now. But if you can replace that in 10 years instead of 5 years by spending a couple $100 a year, totally. Or replace it at the right time. Yeah. If replacing an AC unit right now in Arizona in February, is a lot different than replacing an AC unit in July. Yeah, July on a Sunday morning when it's 110 outside. Yeah, now you're talking about the tenant is in a hotel for a week, and there's a backlog on how long they can come out and things like that. Whereas if you do this preventative maintenance,
maybe they say, hey, you got to replace this, but it's March. I can do this tomorrow instead of in a week.
Yeah. So that preventative stuff will not only save you money, but it's headache and time and all that.
Yeah.
But piggybacking off of that is roofing inspections. And I wouldn't do those every year. Like I said, you should, even if you need to ask your property manager or just go ahead and get an estimate. I recently did one on my house. My house is 10 years old. And I'm like, dude, it's a tile roof. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
And they found like 8 cracked tiles. All the mortar caps are cracked. And they're like, hey, this is like on its way to leaking. The underlayment is almost exposed. All this stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? The house is 10 years old.
Could you imagine if you had to buy another roof?
Oh, dude. And it's just because I didn't want to spend a few $100, right?
Yeah.
Hundreds of dollars later, it's buttoned up and it's good for another 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So that would say, and then the only other thing I would look at preventive maintenance wise is between tenants. It's harder when there's a tenant there to check everything, but between tenants, make sure to get a fine tooth comb and do the preventative maintenance stuff. If you've got angle stops that are frozen, swap those out. If you've got, toilet that you've repaired 3 times, maybe just replace this tenant, right? And preventatively stay ahead of the curve on stuff. And you will save money, in the long run. It is an investment mindset instead of a, month to month type thing. You got to invest in these things. But I would say preventative maintenance will save you the most money besides vacancy, which we always talk about.
Yeah.
But, the highest cost items, I'm getting destroyed on maintenance this last 18 months.
Yeah.
And a lot of it could have been preventative stuff if I would have stayed ahead of it.
Yeah. Well, live and learn, right?
Yep. No, totally. I'm learning with everybody else.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is it for us this time. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, and leave us a 5-star review if you can. It really helps out, and we will see you next time.